Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. HeirofCarthage here, and I've got another Total War Rome 2 battle for you. This one is going to be Galatia versus Iceni. The Iceni are a really interesting flavor of barbarian faction in Rome 2. I say that, about as interesting as flavor got in Rome 2. I do feel like that was one of the weaknesses of Rome 2, is that it wasn't quite as hard-hitting in terms of diversity as, say, like one of the new Warhammer games. And some people might say, that's just because Warhammer has all the crazy stuff. I still feel like CA could do that in a historical game like Rome 2 that has that big scope. You can create the differences in the factions, and I would say a good example of this in Rome 2, for instance, is the Suebi. The Suebi were a very unique faction in this game, and an example of things done right. Now, I would say that the Iceni were similar, not quite as unique, but, kind of headed down that road, and I would like to see more of that from CA in future historical Total War titles. I think they can do it, and I would love to see it. Let's take a look at Galatia's army, because it is mostly all visible to me, whereas the Iceni is not entirely visible. There are 3 Galatian raiders, 4 of them coming up the flank. These are capable in a melee after discharging their javelins, so we want to keep an eye on those. 2 noble horse moving up here, very, very tough, heavy melee cavalry. And then there are several Celtic slingers up front for the Galatians. And then I see a couple of Galatian noblemen. Interesting pick against the Iceni here. The Iceni do not have tremendously powerful swordsmen, though they do have capable swordsmen. But Galatia has gone spear heavy for the most part. Galatian swords, Galatian spears, and then a couple of noblemen. And then there's mercenary Cappadocian cavalry. So Galatia has basically opted to go pike and shot kind of here with the cavalry support. So they have a massive cavalry support. And they're going to rely on the defensive nature of the spears and some skirmishing capability from the slingers, while the damage component comes from their cavalry. At least that's what I would say based on what I'm seeing from Galatia. Let's see what we can see of the Iceni. I see several units of Britain slingers. Now, they do have slightly better attack at 23. Their missile damage, so they are a little deadlier from range. There are chosen sword bands, which these guys are in some ways kind of like well, that was a heroic noble, by the way. So there are chosen sword band. Chosen sword band are kind of like a Tylus tribal warrior, I think, with probably slightly less armor. They're a pretty hard-hitting, more defensive, heavy unit. They have really heavy mass, very heavy mass, and then the heroic nobles are like a slightly less capable Oathsworn, but still very deadly, heavy sword unit. So that's kind of what we're going to see. So pretty dangerous sword contingent that we've seen so far from the Iceni. The Iceni also have some flavor units like chariots. I don't know whether we'll see those. We are seeing their scout riders right now, which are a capable light cavalry, which I believe does chuck a javelin before charging, which can be handy, but they're not going to want to really get mixed up with those Galatian raiders. I think the raiders can keep a pace with them, and that's not a battle they would want to get into. So terrain makes things interesting here. Galatia has most of their forces hidden. The Iceni have most of their forces hidden. I doubt either player wants to come running out of the woods and get smashed in the open. Galatia has made an enormous outflanking overture here, and that is going to be dangerous for the Iceni, very dangerous. So, interesting. This map almost seems reversed. It is. It's showing the submitting team is the red on here, and the other team is the yellow, so it's very odd. Haven't noticed that before. A little bit of a skirmish starting here as the Britain slingers start to get some hits on this Celtic slinger. Now, the Britain slingers definitely better than the Celtic slingers and have the potential to really help the Britons here, but they're going to have to deal with these Galatian raiders, and I would imagine we're going to see the Galatian raiders come try and make their hand felt in this combat. Levy Freemen are going to be needed to help support for sure. Keep those Levy Freemen around to pitch some javelins and keep the Galatian raiders at bay. The Iceni are going to have to deal with these noble horse. That is going to be difficult. They do have a scout rider over here. Let's see what that scout rider may be trying to tempt these noble horse forward into some kind of ambush. I'm not sure. There's a Galatian sword making its way over here to do some scouting. If that swordman is able to neutralize the Levy Freeman, then it's going to make it possible for Galatia to potentially bust through this flank. Though there's a little bit of scouting that still needs to be done here by Galatia to see exactly what's there. And I can see these Galatian raiders definitely want a piece of these slingers, but they're playing somewhat cautiously, as they should, trying to figure out what's over there. The raiders here are doing a good job to keep themselves from being surrounded and caught by the Iceni forces that are coming to challenge them. This is becoming a dangerous situation for the Iceni, depending on what they have hiding here in the woods. This Galatian swordsman can easily take out these spears. And you can see it kind of taunting here, doing its thing, trying to get the Iceni. So the Galatians definitely probing the left flank of the Britons here to see what they have in store. And I would imagine we're going to catch a glimpse of that soon as this swords unit works its way around the flank. The sword unit would be vulnerable to charges of that scout rider. Look at that, though, a nice javelin charge. What's the scout rider up to? Surely he's not going to go out here and go head-to-head with that noble horse. It may just be baiting. I think it is, because it just decides to run past, so it's just baiting at the moment. Oh, there's ambushers coming in behind the Galatian army. There's heavy cavalry here, though, so I don't see this ending well. These infantry can move forward hidden, I think, though it doesn't show them as hidden. They're visible at the moment, so if Galatia sees this, then the Iceni are about to... Yeah, they see it. They're about to cough up some major losses here. These ambushers are going to get shredded by that noble horse. So this trap was sprung too early by the Iceni, and it's going to cost them. That Briton cavalry here... getting involved with the noble horse, we do see a heroic rider come out and smash that Galatian sword. So that was a unit that was in hiding. But the loss of these ambushers with almost no benefit is going to cost the Iceni big time. And this noble horse will absolutely throttle these ambushers. They are very light on armor. They only have 10 armor, and that noble horse is heavily armored. And it is just going to absolutely cremate these light units. And it's even going to be cycle charge, which is going to make things worse. Here comes a nice battle rhythm Galatian spear. It will get in and do good damage to those ambushers as well. Again, the armor just isn't there to protect the ambushers from these spears. So it is going to be rough. Ambushers are really solid units on the charge. They can do a lot of damage, but it is difficult to use them effectively because they really cannot be found early, and they have to get into the right charge at just the right moment. And this is what happens, unfortunately, a lot of times to ambushers, is they are seen and they are killed. The noble horse here, kind of like Liam Neeson, saying that he has a specific set of tools that make him a nightmare for people like them. And that noble horse, yeah, wow, crushing the ambushers. So Iceni are going to be at a bit of a disadvantage here in a melee, probably because of the money lost there. However, they do still have a bit of a skirmisher advantage. The Galatians are going to move forward and begin a skirmishing phase. The Briton slingers should be able to win that, but the Galatians can now have some benefit, and they can operate, I think, with a bit of confidence in knowing that they took out a couple of these Briton units. There's still some very potent Briton infantry in the woods, though, and remember, the Galatians do not have very potent melee in this case. They have to rely on that heavy cavalry, so Britons need to be very careful with their slingers, and they are here. They're falling back with plenty of time to keep them away from that Cappadocian cavalry. They're holding their position in the forest, which they absolutely need to do, because if they stay in the forest, it will neutralize some of the advantage of the heavy cavalry. These Galatian raiders, though, are going to be a real pain in the butt for the Britons. There was 4 of them earlier. Yep, here's the others. So there's still 4 of them. And a nice job here by the Britons positioning these spears to keep those raiders out of their immediate backline. And let's see what the Iceni do next. We're at a bit of a stalemate here. Again, the Galatians did move forward. Okay, the slingers pop back up. Wow. Now all 4 of them firing. That is going to be very dangerous to the Celtic slingers. That cover in the woods is going to be very effective. I almost feel like the Briton slingers here may have done better to ignore the Celtic slingers and just shoot those Cappadocian cavalry. A little bit of a late retreat here. And if the slingers go down, the Britons are going to be totally useless, I think, against this Galatian army. And that was a late defense of the slingers, and the Cappadocians made them pay for it. So I would say that Galatia just gained a big upper hand here. A big upper hand. The slingers, some of them even routed. They might get them back, but that's a 50% casualty rate on that one. Significant casualties on another. So that was definitely an effective charge there by those horses. Still a very tough infantry line here that Galatia has to overcome, but getting rid of the slingers is certainly the first step. We're now seeing that heroic rider over here as well. There could be another. I'm guessing just the one. So it's going to be difficult for the Iceni to stave off the cavalry attacks of Galatia here. Galatia is effectively putting a lot of pressure. This Levy Freeman now thrown away into the missiles of Galatia. It had chased that cavalry back, maybe hoping to throw some javelins, but that was not a great use of that Levy Freeman. So the Briton slingers have pulled forward again. I would imagine we're going to see the same push here from the Galatians. Every time those Iceni slingers come forward, the cavalry or the infantry is going to come pressure them, force them back, and continue to cause issues because the Galatians here have a significant mobility advantage. Levy Freeman being used to hold that Galatian sword. I kind of feel like that the slingers shouldn't be targeting the Celtic slingers. The Celtic slingers aren't going to do much to the Britons here, in my opinion, because of the woods. I feel like that the Iceni slingers should be picking away at the infantry and the cavalry of the Galatians as best they can. Oh, look at that. Nice javelin. The slingers late to retreat here in the center, but they are going to retreat, and it looks like the Iceni infantry kind of mobilizing a little, though they still need to stick in the woods, in my opinion. Just stay there. Don't move out of the woods. They may be frustrated, though, and go ahead and just charge, but they really need to stay in the woods and play this one out. I don't know if they're going to be able to win because of some of the losses they took early, but they're certainly not going to win on open ground against the Galatians, in my opinion. But that is what's happening here. I think the Iceni are just going to come out and charge and go for it. So let's see what happens. Those Briton slingers are now not going to be well defended because a heroic rider's not left back there with them, and so those slingers will likely die to cavalry sooner or later. Here comes that Iceni infantry line, a very powerful infantry line. It's going to be charged by a mercenary Cappadocian here. Chosen Swordman was not braced because they were going to chuck their javelins, and the Galatians have this ability here to basically interrupt and hurt the infantry line while they basically delay a melee. Heroic riders here caught up in a Galatian spear, not where they want to be. Need to get out of there. Those heroic riders can ill afford to throw themselves away here. Let's see if the Briton slingers able to hit any key targets. That noble horse would really be the most ideal target for the Briton slingers. One of the cavalry able to bust through the infantry and do some damage into the rear lines. So big problem here for the Iceni, as their slingers, which had already been hit hard, are going to be hit hard a second time. With the support of these noble horse, the Chosen Sword Band are really going to have their work cut out for them. Again, the infantry for the Britons here, in my opinion, very superior to that of the Galatians. These noblemen are a tough unit for the sword bands to chew up. Certainly not too tough for a heroic noble, but you can see here that, I mean, the charges are now incoming, and after that initial charge, then rear charges, the Briton infantry is going to get rolled up, I think, pretty significantly here. Those noble horse are just brutally powerful on the charge. And again, it's not like that the Galatian player was ever going to make this easy, but these would have needed to be the target for those slingers, as well as the Cappadocian cavalry, not the Celtic slingers. The Celtic slingers were not the major threat here, especially with the cover in the woods. But I think that the Britons here felt like, hey, I really can't just stay in the woods for a whole lot longer, and I may lose regardless. So I think they decided to just come out, just throw their cards on the table and go for it. I've done the same thing a lot when I play Rome 2, where I'll end up in a tough situation. It's like, you know what? Let's just go for it. Let's just go and die in glory here on the battlefield. And I think that's what the Iceni chose in this case. And they're going to cause a lot of damage to the Galatians. Like, the Galatians won't get out of this scot-free. But I do think that their noble horse will just absolutely devastate. We're up to 200 kills on that one and 150 on the other. The heroic rider's already not quite a match for the noble horse. And there's only one of them to contend with two. And then the Galatian nobleman here did really well on the charge, good enough that it was able to stop basically the infantry line. Noblemen are very tough spears. They have the 30 damage weapon. They have decent attack. So they're pretty sturdy units overall. That one's picked up 2 chevrons. It's all the way up to 40 attack. So yeah. Despite having the better melee units, the situation in which they had to be used, the Iceni just could not get the better of this engagement. Look at this noble horse. That one's going to rocket up over 200 kills right there. And let's see where that other noble horse is and how it's doing. Yeah, 230 kills there. Whew, yeah, it's an interesting build by Galatia, not what I would have expected. Clearly the Iceni here expected a line of Galatian legionaries, and they brought a fairly good contingent to face off against said legionaries, but Galatia threw them a curveball here and had 4 raiders, 2 Cappadocians, and 2 noble horse, and then just spears on the main line. So that is not what I would have expected, and sometimes an unexpected army build can be a very effective strategy in the sense that it can render your opponent's pick less useful. Now, sometimes it can backfire on you and make it to where you lose the battle as a result of your pick, but I like this. It's actually a strategy that I used a lot whenever I played multiplayer. I would sometimes try to pick something unconventional to try and unbalance my opponent and then hopefully gain a victory through it. So again, it is a strategy you can take. It does not always work. In this case, I think it worked rather well. And it was an interesting way because Galatia usually does its damage with the legionaries and the Syrian archers, and neither of those units was even present on the battlefield here. Galatian raiders, although a frequent unit, may not usually come in 4s, which I think made this very dangerous. The Iceni do have very capable swords, and I think that Hotel Soap knew that in this case and just decided to fight a different way. And it did end up working out for him. So GG to both players, Sparta Dane and Hotel Soap here. Appreciate them and hope you all enjoyed it. HeirofCarthage signing out for now. I'll see you all soon with some more action on the battlefields of Total War Rome 2.